Hi, everyone. Welcome to Interchange. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you so very much for joining us. We have interesting stuff to talk about on this holiday weekend. A major change coming for the Boy Scouts. The national group votes to allow openly gay kids into the Scouts, but will still ban openly gay adults from being Scout leaders. We'll talk about state lawmakers voting to allow the governor and the state to sell state-owned properties. Do you think this means Camp Randall is going to be called a Nike Field? And we'll talk about whether or not Memorial Day is really celebrated anymore the way it was meant to be celebrated. All right, let me introduce everybody. We have Kevin Fischer, former broadcast journalist, political analyst, and oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Talk Radio. You know Joel McNally, longtime newspaper columnist. And of course, Gerard Randall, education consultant and local job creation expert. Rick Horowitz will be along with commentary at the end of the show. All right, first let's talk about the Thursday vote by leaders of the Boy Scouts of America to allow openly gay kids into the Scouts, while at the same time voting not to allow openly gay adults to serve as Boy Scout leaders. Is this a good thing, a bad thing, or just a major sign that society is changing?
Still got tapped first, huh? I think that it's a sign of a changing society, and certainly more acceptance of the reality that, with regards to those who are gay, that society is more receptive to their lifestyles, if not who they are as human beings. I think, though, that the problem will persist because of the Scouts' close affiliation with religious-sponsored organizations, churches, synagogues that sponsor troops, and there is a lot of orientation towards religious principles that still are a significant part of the Scouts' heritage and what they try to pass on as well. So I don't see this as something that ends. I do think the Scouts are right in this respect. We've gotten further and further away from organizations that are comfortable really saying this is what we preach, what we teach, and this is who we're targeting, who we aim to be affiliated with. And so I don't think the pressure is going to yield on them to maybe even change some of their principles, but I do think this is a big step towards their acknowledging societal change.
Do you think it will hurt Scouting because a lot of the church-affiliated groups will say, well, we don't want to be a part of this anymore?
I'm very offended by even that suggestion. I do not think there is any legitimate religion that teaches hate and that teaches young people to hate themselves. I don't think that's a religious principle. I just reject that outright. The number one cause of death among gay teenagers is suicide. And if you can't count on the institutions in society that are supposed to care about young people and care about their lives and care about them turning out to be decent human beings and feeling good about themselves, if they detect that you're really being put down and somehow degraded by them, that could be horrible for a young person. It really can. I hate this, even the allusion to lifestyles. These aren't lifestyles, these are lives of these young people. And for them to be rejected by an organization that's supposed to be serving them and supposed to care about them, and if these are church-affiliated groups, supposed to love them, that's tragic. And this is long overdue, and in fact, I'm kind of upset. I'm glad they finally did it, but I'm still kind of upset that they couldn't go all the way and say, you know what, homosexual adults are also decent people. That doesn't mean they're going to prey on young people because you're a homosexual adult is no more likely to prey on a young person than a heterosexual adult is, because child predators are child predators. That's a minority of heterosexuals, and it's a minority of homosexuals. And the fact that you somehow say a homosexual adult is not qualified to be a role model for young people, or a leader of young people. You know, some of the gay scouts who have taken the strongest stands to change scouting have been Eagle Scouts who would be a role model for any young person. But because they were gay and announced they were gay, they got kicked out of the organization. They were not allowed to become leaders in that organization. It's about time this happened. It's long overdue, and I think yes, finally even some of the most conservative institutions in our society, such as the Boy Scouts of America, have been forced to become decent people, to recognize young people need us to support them and be around them, and lead them, to better lives, not put them down and direct hate towards them.
Kevin, some people think this is ruining a great organization. Other people think it's making a great organization better by bringing it into the 21st century.
I think it was unnecessary. For over 100 years, you had a private institution that had a code that said, like it or not, that homosexuality does not comply with our code of principles and morals and virtues. And the highest court in the land in 2000, United States Supreme Court, said this code is lawful. And the Boy Scouts have been doing a tremendous job over a century of grooming young boys into manhood. I didn't think this was necessary, and unfortunately the Boy Scouts rejected their own Supreme Court victory. And I think you said something very critical, Gerard, that we're seeing more and more organizations folding. They're not standing up for what they believe in. And here's a case where the Boy Scouts earlier this year sent out over 2,000 surveys to parents and Boy Scouts and people affiliated with the organization, and 61% said they wanted to keep it the way it is. But now what do you have? Joel, you talk about you wish that they would go all the way. This is a problem now. This is a problem because you have a 17-year-old scout maybe working on his Eagle Scout project. When he turns 18, he'll be thrown out of the group. And I've said this on the program in the past, liberals, and they're very good at it, they work incrementally. They chip away, and they will not stop at this. They will. This opens the door for when you don't allow 18-year-old gays or older into the organization. You're going to see lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. You're going to see, I think, an erosion of the numbers of Boy Scouts. You might even see splinter groups form as alternatives to the Boy Scouts. So this isn't over yet. This is going to get ugly.
You mischaracterized the Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court decision said, yes, this is a private organization and has the right to set its own rules. It did not say preaching hatred is a good idea. It did not say making young people hate themselves is a good idea.
Well, I know a lot of Boy Scouts, and none of them are hateful.
And as a matter of fact, there's nothing liberal about being homosexual. It's a human condition.
I'm talking about the Boy Scouts.
No, you were talking. Yes, you mentioned liberal. You said somehow this is a liberal movement. There are
certain opponents of the Boy Scouts.
There are gay Republicans. There are gay Democrats. There are gay independents. It is not a political position. It is a human position. And the truth of the matter is, we have come to recognize these are not some alien beings in our midst. These are members of our family.
We're talking about Boy Scouts.
These are people we love. These are decent human beings, and that is what is becoming accepted, and that's a very good thing.
Where does it stop?
Decency, it shouldn't stop ever.
The opponents went after the code that says you have to be morally straight, all right?
I swore to that when I was a Boy Scout. That had nothing to do with being gay or straight.
Now, where does it go from here? Do we say that we're going to throw out that Scouts have to have a duty to God? Is that next? I think it is.
Are you saying homosexuals are immoral?
I'm talking about this Boy Scout decision.
You're suggesting it's immoral.
No, I'm talking about the code that says homosexuality does not comply with the Boy Scout code, which the United Supreme Court
don't talk hatred.
Next topic. A committee of state lawmakers has approved a request from Governor Walker that will make it easier to sell state-owned properties to private interest. It's expected to be approved by the full legislature. Any sale would still need the okay from the Finance Committee of the legislature and the State Building Commission, but it does give Walker much more authority to sell properties like highways, power plants, state buildings, things like that, without getting any competitive bids. Now, the UW system doesn't like this idea at all, thinks it's going to hurt in the efforts to get rich folks to donate money to build buildings on campus. Is that true?
Of course.
Yes, I think the perception that once you give money and you put your name on it, that somehow or the other that might be violated in some way will, if nothing else, create some contracts at the time that people give money for these buildings that will probably have some restrictions on the sale sometime in the future. I don't think it's going to pass the full legislature. I think that that overall this was an effort to once again rein in the UW and to put some clips on the power of the Board of Regents. There are a whole lot of things that surfaced as a result of this past mess around the money that they had salted away. But I think overall what will happen is that this will be examined again and again and again, and they will go back to, if not a tighter structure, at least a structure that's radically different from what has currently been proposed, that would give the governor unlimited ability, in effect, to make these sales. Here's one of the problems, too. There have been those that have felt that there are some businesses the state ought not be in, and they would like to see some of these facilities, like the power plants, taken off of the state's rolls. And in the process of trying to have an expedient way of unloading those, they've looked to this piece of legislation to make that happen. I don't know if it's the best thought out piece of legislation, but I don't think either house of the legislature is going to pass it.
What's wrong with having a private company run a power plant at the University of Stevens Point or something?
Nothing's wrong with that. But that is the monkey wrench in this. Mm-hmm. What if I gave a lot of money to a building, and now you're going to say, well, I'm just going to sell it off? And that's why I don't understand all the angst about this. Having worked up in Madison and on a lot of budgets, you've got a lot of time left. And I think there's plenty of opportunity for much compromise on this. For goodness sakes, nobody even has a complete list of all the state properties and facilities and buildings that the state owns, and there's some heartburn about, oh my gosh, we're going to sell prisons and highways, and you brought up Camp Randall Stadium, right? That it would be Nike Stadium someday, and there have been some overtones about the state capitol itself. That no one's talking about that. I think about 3-4 years ago, there was talk in Arizona about selling off their state capitol, but I don't hear any serious discussion about a fire sale of a lot of the state buildings. Some I could see if they're not of much use, or if we could sell them off to whittle away at our huge debt that some of those buildings are giving us. Then I say, go ahead. But a lot could happen between now and July 1st. When the budget is going to be, I think, ready and signed into law, and that includes maybe even taking it out of the budget and viewing it as a separate policy item, which I could see that happening too.
Or could Walker just use his line item veto to cross everything out and just sell what he specifically wants to?
Yeah, Kevin said something very interesting. There isn't even a list of all this property that Walker wants to sell, yet he wants a blank check to sell anything. The fact that you two have concentrated on the university, I think, is beside the point, because he could sell anything. You said, what's wrong with having a power plant owned by a private industry? Guess what? A private operator of one of our state power plants would have to jack up the prices in order to make a profit. That's the only reason a private company buys something public, is to make profits on it. This is corruption, is what it is, and you know, private prisons are illegal in Wisconsin right now. You know why? Private prisons are a horrible idea. You know how private prisons make money? Through recidivism. The more people they incarcerate, the more money they make. They have no even no interest in rehabilitation, no interest in turning out people better than they were when they went in. If they turn them out worse, they come back quicker and they make more money. Selling highways, selling the Capitol. He said Arizona talked about it. Arizona didn't talk about it. They did it, and now they're trying to figure out how to get it back. It is the only reason. Here is things the taxpayers in this state have paid money in for decades, and we're going to give them away to high rollers who will be able to make profits off of them. You know who buys power plants? The Koch brothers buy power plants. The Koch brothers, these corrupt billionaires who have helped put Scott Walker in office, buy power plants from public places and make huge profits off of them. It is insane to turn over to the governor who had his ethical and criminal problems here in Milwaukee County. He didn't go to prison, but a half a dozen people around him did. And now we're going to say he can sell anything he wants to any, and he doesn't have to take competitive bids.
No, even
he
if
doesn't even have to take competitive bids. He can sell it to anyone he chooses.
Even if the bill would go through as is being discussed right now, you would not have this outlandish assumption that Joel makes here on television that the governor can just willy-nilly just sell off anything he wants.
No competitive bids and no list of what he can sell. He can sell anything.
There would be legislative oversight
by the Republicans who give him a rubber stamp every time he proposes something.
There would be a building commission type setup where you would have individuals from both parties would have to review these sales. So it's not as simple as
this is corruption. This is corruption, and you guys should be ashamed.
It's not corruption.
It is corruption.
The whole idea is to
selling things without competitive bids that we paid for, we taxpayers already paid for.
That's why
selling our facilities so someone else can make a profit on them.
That's why, to repeat,
and charge us more.
That's why, and just calm down, Joel. It's not soup yet. I want to repeat that. There's a lot of time left in this legislative process. Members of both parties have found fault with this.
The Democrats have no voice. It's Walker's Republicans who let him do anything he wants.
No, some Republicans are speaking out about some of the provisions.
There's still a few who have ethics and intelligence.
I know you don't listen, Joel. You just scream and holler. But some Republicans,
I wouldn't listen to what you said.
Republicans
it doesn't make any sense.
Calling for this to be taken out of the budget completely and handled as a separate policy item. And I think you're going to see major changes.
It is corruption.
All right, let's talk about Memorial Day for a few minutes. A day set aside to honor those who fought and died for this country. Do you think, though, it really means much to anybody anymore, or is it just another long holiday weekend to kick off the summer?
No, I think that for many, and certainly our age group and older, it still has a lot of the same significance that it had years ago. I still go out to the cemetery and we make sure that the graves of our loved ones are decorated. We called it Decoration Day, as many did. I think with younger people, though, maybe the traditions that we observed are probably not as not followed as much. People find ways to spend that day doing other things. I don't know that there's as much of an attachment to World War II veterans as there has been in the past, because so many of them are dying off, and grandchildren today are not as mindful of those sacrifices that were made by that generation. We don't feel the same way about veterans who, even going back to the Korean War,
the Forgotten War.
The Forgotten War. Vietnam was one where even at the time those veterans came home were treated with disdain. And then those successive wars, Afghanistan and Iraq, those wars have certainly left sour taste in the mouths of many, and so we probably don't appreciate the sacrifices those veterans have made as much either. But World War II was one of those signal events in everyone's life who was around at that time that I think it really brought people together around a common cause, and people who remembered those veterans personally, or those who remembered that sacrifice, still observe, I think, with a great deal of sincerity and remembrance those folks.
Do you think society today and the young people today have an admiration and respect for the veterans the younger veterans who fought in the Gulf Wars and fought in Afghanistan and even as far back as Korea and Vietnam, as people did have for the World War II veterans?
They have as much respect for the servicemen and the soldiers. I mean, I've been in airports where they let the young kids who look like they're 17 or 18 years old and they're in uniform and they get on the plane first and everyone claps and applauds them. But I'll tell you what the real difference is. And Gerard put his finger on it. World War II was a common cause. Everyone in this country sacrificed. They rationed food and rationed gasoline, and everyone's family was touched by going and fighting and maybe not coming back. And women took over the factories because their men were off fighting the war. It was something that touched everybody. The sad thing is these wars don't touch anybody. The wars we've had recently, Iraq and Afghanistan. Not only did we fight those wars for 10 years, we sacrificed nothing. Most people didn't worry about their families. It was only those who were in the service who often turned to that because they didn't have any other economic opportunities in this country. They went off and fought, and we forgot about them and didn't care about them. We applauded them, but it didn't touch us. And we not only did we not sacrifice and ration, we didn't even raise any taxes to pay for it, and we cut the taxes of the richest people in America while those young people were fighting and dying. And you know who got really rich off those wars? Of course, there were American companies that got rich off of young Americans dying in those wars. Halliburton.
It's really sad.
Has it become acceptable?
Let me just say this. It's really sad that even on a topic like Memorial Day, that we have to get so petty and so partisan.
That's not petty. That's a big subject.
You said we haven't sacrificed anything.
We have.
That's an insult to all the families of our brave military soldiers who came back in caskets. You were going to ask me
You didn't hear.
Has it become acceptable not to admire veterans?
I hope not. And I think that there still is a degree of remembrance, but not what it should be. I don't think we're talking about it in our schools enough. It's not being taught as part of our history. I certainly think we're talking about Earth Day and kids are going out and doing all kinds of projects for days like that, but how many of our students are out putting flags out on graves this weekend? And also, I want to point out this angle too, from a historical standpoint. I think my history is correct. Back in the late 60s, under President Nixon and Congress back then, that's when we instituted this idea that not all, but a large portion of our holidays should be celebrated on Mondays to make them 3-day weekends. So now what? What have they become? They're anything but what they're intended to be. They become extended vacations, barbecues, days on the beach, and that's sad.
All right. Well, there's plenty to criticize about the Obama administration's behavior in some of these recent controversies. Rick Horowitz certainly agrees with that. But when it comes to playing pummel the president, he thinks the old saying still makes sense. Consider the source. So how do you separate the legitimate critics from the kooks? Rick has a suggestion.
There's just so much information out there, who knows where to start? How is anyone supposed to tell the facts, the fakes, apart? When it all seems much too much for any brain to comprehend, I can bring your deepest worries to an end. Ask your source one simple question. It'll tell you how to judge if it's info worth exploring or he's gnawing on a grudge. Just a single question separates the gold, the garbage pile. Put your query to your quarry with a smile. Was our President Obama born inside the USA? Then be still and you'll discover if his mind has slipped away. If he answers absolutely, then there's something he might know. Any other answer? Time for you to go. If he pops his cork at Kenya, if he says it's all a fraud, if he says, what birth certificate? The guy was born abroad. You can ditch him at the curbside when he tells you you're a chump, because he gets his news from folks like Donald Trump. If he stumbles, stutters, mumbles, mutters, tries to duck and weave, thank him kindly for his friendship, wish him best of luck, and leave. Because he wouldn't know the real world if it bit him on the nose. He can't tell his CIAs from UFOs. Was Barack Hussein Obama born inside the USA? It's an easy way to figure. Can you trust what else they say? It's the one-stop shop for crazies. It's the key to La La Land. It's for folks who swear by Rush and Reince and Rand. Are there gators in the sewers? O.J. Simpson, was he framed? Is the grassy knoll the spot from where the fatal shots were aimed? Every era has its loonies with conspiracies galore. But finally, a way of keeping score.
Well, thanks, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a wonderful holiday.